I woke up at 3:27 a.m. to the faint sound of my window sliding open. My heart thumped painfully against my ribs as I lay frozen in the darkness. Adrenaline tore through my chest. A shadow drifted over the wall, and I heard a whisper, low and familiar. "Still think you're better than me?" I recognized that voice. My breath caught in my throat. My father was standing in my doorway, watching me sleep. For the first time in months, I felt raw, brittle fear. Every muscle in my body tensed. I strained my ears against the silence, but all I heard was my own ragged breathing. How did it come to this? I realized I had to tell how it all began. It started on a late summer afternoon years ago, when I was just 10. I sat cross-legged on our living room floor, playing Uno with Dad for the first time. The sun filtered through the blinds, dust motes dancing in the air. Dad shuffled the cards and smiled down at me. "I'll go easy on you, kiddo," he said, ruffling my hair. I beamed at him and did my best to play well. I wanted him to be proud. The game played out slowly, each card turning over with a soft click. I watched my dad's face as I neared victory. He held 3 cards, and I was down to 1. When I finally dropped my last card and won, I felt a thrill of triumph. But my smile disappeared the instant I looked up at him. My dad's face turned ashen with fury. Without a word, he snatched the deck from me and hurled the cards across the room. They flew in all directions, landing on the carpet like confetti. I jumped back startled. His eyes blazed and he glared at the mess of cards. "Go clean that up," he barked, voice cold as ice, then slammed his bedroom door so hard the frame rattled. I froze, tears pricking my eyes, but didn't dare make a sound. He didn't say another word to me for the rest of the week. He didn't smile at me in the halls, didn't joke, didn't even laugh. He wouldn't even come to my school talent show. I remember standing on stage, ready to sing, scanning the audience for him. The seat where he should have been, the seat next to Mom's picture, stayed empty. By the time I finally picked up those scattered Uno cards and tucked them away, I had sworn something to myself. I would never play another game with him again. A year later, nothing had changed. Dad was still as competitive as ever. We sat in the living room one afternoon as he and his friends played Connect 4 at the coffee table. When I peeked in the doorway, he smiled and patted the empty seat beside him. "Wanna play?" he offered. My chest soared with a glimmer of hope. Maybe the old dad was back? I wanted to trust him, even if just a little. I agreed and took my seat. Everything seemed fine at first. But as the game neared its end, tension crackled in the air again. When I placed my final piece and won the game, the victory smile on my face turned to horror. Dad's eyes widened, jaw tightening. "Who the F*** do you think you are?" he suddenly roared, sending his friends scrambling away. He grabbed the remaining game pieces and flung them to the floor. I clutched the chair in front of me, breathing hard. His face was bright red with rage. He raised his fist as if he might strike me, but then he paused. For a terrifying moment, I thought he would hit me again. My body curled into myself, anticipating pain, but he didn't. Instead, Dad did the strangest thing. He whirled and stomped into the kitchen, grabbed a cold beer from the fridge, and downed half of it in one gulp. The anger in his eyes flickered, then subsided. He shook his head and took another deep breath, all tension draining from his posture. I exhaled the breath I'd been holding in disbelief, tears of fear running down my cheeks. I told myself this is over. He had calmed down. But deep inside, I knew it was a lie. It got worse shortly after that. I was 11 when I proudly showed Dad my report card one afternoon. Straight A's across the board. I bounded into the living room, report card in hand, expecting a hug or at least a smile. Instead, he glanced up from the couch and narrowed his eyes. Without even looking at the grades, he sneered. "Did you cheat on these?" Before I could answer, he spit out another question. "Or, did you sleep with your teacher?" My chest stung. My throat closed up. I just stared back, stunned and speechless. The paper slipped from my fingers to the floor. That night, I didn't hear Dad waking me up for school at 7:30 as he always did. In the morning, I wandered down in my pajamas to find him on the couch making phone calls. My voice barely a whisper, I asked, "Dad, why didn't you wake me?" His eyes flicked up, cold and flat. He pointed at the TV and said casually, "Son, you're not going to school anymore. I'm going to homeschool you from now on." For a moment, I felt the old joy return. I thought this meant we'd spend more time together. I threw my arms around him, choking out an excited, "Really? Thank you, Daddy." But his smile was forced this time, not real. He patted my head absently and set me down. Then he turned on me with a look I'd come to know well, tight-lipped and cruel. "Just so we're clear," he said, voice low, "there's one rule with this homeschooling thing. You're not allowed to learn anything. Ever. Understand?" My stomach flipped. "Yes, Daddy," I lied through a forced smile, hugging him again as tightly as I could. Inside, I was terrified. At first, the homeschooling was all fun and games, barbecue lunches, and a constant replay of The Lion King, as if Dad was showering me with love. But by the third week, I was so sick of cartoons that I finally dared to ask the question burning inside me. Dad, when are we going to actually do any schoolwork? His face twisted with rage. He stood up, towering over me. Why, he snapped, voice trembling. So you can get smarter than me and think you're better? His eyes stabbed at me. Don't you dare. In that moment, I realized with a sinking heart, he meant every word. He wasn't letting me study to keep me from outgrowing him. He stared with disgust as if I had done something unforgivable by wanting knowledge. I trembled, but forced another smile and quickly said, No, Dad. I'm happy just learning this way. Thank you. It was a desperate lie. He huffed and shook his head. Good. Be grateful for once. He grabbed his beer and walked away. I stood there holding back tears. From that day on, I kept my eagerness to myself. Inside, I begged to learn, but I knew better than to push it. By the time I was 16, I barely read at a 5th grade level. School subjects became like fairy tales I'd never seen. Yet I still tried. When Dad wasn't around, I would sneak books and read online articles on my phone, as quietly as I could. It gave me a secret thrill. But it didn't fool him. One night in May, he returned home early. I was reading a ripped paperback under my bed's quilt and thought I had him fooled once more. The next thing I remember was a sharp pain exploding in my head. The picture on the ceiling spun as my father hit me again and again. I counted 13 blows, as many as the pages I had read. Each hit was a declaration. I'd broken his rule. When his arm finally dropped, I crumpled to the floor, blood trickling down my forehead onto the books. He stood over me, breathing hard. The silence was thick with his satisfaction. 13, he muttered to himself. Just like your pages. I couldn't even cry. I lay there trembling, more shocked than hurt, realizing just how twisted he'd become. I didn't waste a second after that. On my 18th birthday, I shoved a few clothes and a $20 bill into a duffel bag and ran away. I had no plan. I wandered the city streets, heart aching from years of fear and loneliness. Many doors slammed in my face. No one wanted to hire a frightened kid who couldn't read well. I slept in abandoned bus shelters and hungry bought spare fast food burgers when I could. Eventually, one chilly night, I stumbled to a small church nestled between row houses. Pastor Mike was just closing up. When he saw me standing shivering at the door, he opened it wide without a word. His wife brought me soup, his parishioners found me an old cot, and the church gave me a warm bed and a place to stay indefinitely. I felt something that didn't happen at home, safe. For the first time, people treated me kindly. I helped around the church by washing dishes and cleaning, anything they needed. I was quiet and grateful. Pastor Mike and his wife never asked why I was there or judged how messy I was. On Sunday mornings, I listened to a sermon about hope and counted my blessings silently, tears stinging my eyes. Slowly, with Pastor Mike's gentle encouragement, I dared to learn again. He introduced me to Mrs. Marilyn, a retired teacher who offered to tutor me after church 3 afternoons a week. Those first lessons were brutal. I struggled with words the kids in my class at home already knew. Mrs. Marilyn never laughed or sighed. She just patiently helped me sound out syllables and solve simple math. Every time I read a sentence correctly, she cheered softly. My eyes would tear up with pride. It was the first praise I'd ever felt was truly mine. One lonely night months later, after a tutoring session, I sat on Pastor Mike's worn couch with tears in my eyes. I had done all the crying I could alone. Now I felt the anger and shame well up. With trembling fingers, I turned on my laptop and began to write. I poured my entire story into a single post. All the games Dad had forced me to play. The cake incident, the stolen education, the beatings, and the psychological torment. I wrote it like a confession, raw and honest. Then I hit post. I closed the computer and sobbed into my pillow, too tired even to worry. An hour later, my phone buzzed. My story had gone viral. I was shaking as I read comments. One woman called me brave. A few friends of Pastor Mike sent prayers. But so many others attacked me. No parent would do that, they said. This is fake. For every kind word, there were 10 accusing me of lying. Then came the messages. 40 of them from strangers. You think you're so smart now? We'll make you pay. You're not fooling anyone. They were all similar, full of threats and hate. My blood ran cold when I recognized the phrasing. It was him. My father. He had somehow found my post. I stared at that screen with tears blurring my vision. Dad was reading my words. He knew where I was. I shut the phone and started to panic. Pastor Mike rushed in as soon as I called. We locked every door and changed the locks on my windows. That night he gave me the only spare key and said, I'm here with you. We'll protect you, I promise. I whispered back, I just want out. He offered to take me to the police, but I shook my head. They'd never helped me before. They never would, not without more proof. So I pulled myself together and focused on what I could control, studying. I signed up for a GED prep class at a nearby community college. My days filled up with practice tests and reading materials. With each word I learned, I felt a flicker of my old pride. Then one morning I found chaos. I had gone to the church basement to get my GED books and found them torn to shreds on the floor. My notebooks were ripped, papers crumpled. Someone had broken in and destroyed everything I owned here. My chest dropped. Pastor Mike and I searched the empty streets for clues, but saw none. We knew who it had to be. Dad was relentless. He was out to stop me from learning again. The next week, I felt terrified all the time. Every noise, a car backfiring, a dog barking, made me jump. Every knock at the church door made me flinch. Then, late one night when a storm rattled the windows, I had an idea. From my backpack, I pulled the small voice recorder Pastor Mike had given me for notes. Holding the teddy bear I never threw away, I turned the recorder on and hid it among the stuffed animals on my bed. I listened to silence for 3 nights. On the 4th night, at exactly 3:27 a.m., my recorder clicked on its own. My heart locked up. I played it later. I heard the window slide open, soft footsteps on the floor, and then a shaky breath. Finally, my father's voice right next to me, "Still think you're better than me?" I couldn't sleep for days after that. But this time I had what I needed. We went to the police with the recording. They took it seriously at last. They said they couldn't arrest someone without catching him in the act, but they listened. They also told me I shouldn't stay here alone. I refused to run away again. Instead, I prepared to fight back. I bought a cheap notebook and made it dramatic, a fake diary. Every night I wrote long entries about my growing trauma, claiming I was planning a TV interview and a lawyer was on the case. It was full of lies, exactly the kind Dad was spreading. I left the journal in plain sight on my nightstand. 2 nights later, it vanished. My heart raced, but I stayed calm outwardly. A day or 2 after that, I saw truth-teller accounts all over social media, quoting lines from my fake diary as if I had written them in reality. The posts called me a liar and insane. But there it was. One of them had even used the made-up phrase glass onion pride I had scribbled randomly. That was my proof. He had posted those lies. Using clues from those accounts, IP addresses, location, writing style, Pastor Mike and I traced them right back to him. Even the password hint was an old Yahoo address he used. The evidence was overwhelming. I gathered it all into a packet. Screenshots of posts, the photo of me sleeping, the audio files, everything. Instead of taking it to the police again, I mailed it anonymously to Dad's employer. 3 days later, I got word. Dad had been called into the HR office, lost his temper, and was fired on the spot. Apparently, he slammed a desk in anger when confronted with harassment policies. I felt guilty and relieved. He no longer had a job. We thought that might finally end it. But that very night, he showed up at the church. I was in the basement helping prepare communion when I heard shouting. Pastor Mike and some men blocked the entrance as Dad screamed in the parking lot, "You ruined my life. You think you've won." The police came and ordered him to leave. He hadn't done anything illegal. He just yelled threats. The church filed for an emergency restraining order. Dad had to stay 500 feet away from the building. For a few weeks, I finally started to feel safe. I slept through the nights. I concentrated on my study guides and practiced tests again. I even slept in without panic. Then one morning I descended to the basement to get a new set of books, and my heart froze. Everything was trashed. My bed was overturned, my books shredded. My closet was emptied on the floor. There was still no sign of forced entry or broken locks. But there it was, a single note lying on the mattress in typewritten letters. "You took everything from me. I'll do the same to you." Panic raced through me. Past attacks had scared me, but this felt final. Pastor Mike called the police at once. They came, dusted for prints, mine were everywhere, and spent hours interviewing volunteers. But in the end, they shrugged. "No evidence," an officer muttered. "Inside job maybe. Keep watch." Inside job. The word hung in the air like a curse. I had suspected it, but never believed it. Someone here could be helping him. I couldn't look at anybody without imagining them sneaking a key to Dad. Even my closest friend, Aaron, suddenly seemed suspect to me. Aaron was Pastor Mike's nephew, a quiet tech whiz. When I told Eliza in tears what had happened, she immediately called Aaron. "He's coming back," she sobbed. Aaron looked at me and said softly, "Not if we catch him." He rigged up a basic security camera in my room, an old smartphone on a tripod, recording to the cloud. We tested it for days. I began to feel like maybe I could breathe again. And then it happened. The alert came at 3:27 a.m. on a Tuesday. I bolted upright in bed and grabbed my phone. The footage showed him, my father, slipping through the back door. He had somehow befriended the night janitor and obtained a key. He stalked through the dark, came down the hall, and stood at my bedroom door. For 6 full minutes, he just stared at me sleeping. Then he turned silently and walked out. Tears stung my eyes as the horror sank in. That was how he'd been getting in all along. My hand flew to my mouth, and I woke Pastor Mike. We watched the video together in shocked silence. Pastor Mike sprang into action. By morning, a locksmith had changed all the church locks. I was moved out of the basement apartment into a locked unit above the office, one usually reserved for visiting speakers. Only he and one trusted staffer had the key now. The janitor who gave Dad his keys was quietly let go. Pastor Mike pulled me aside as everything was being sorted out. He looked me square in the eyes. "You are not alone anymore. We won't let him hurt you again," he said firmly. And at that, I finally broke. Years of fear, shame, and pain poured out. I wept in his arms like a child, gripping his shirt, sobbing until I had nothing left in me. He just held me while I cried. It was the first time in a very long time that I felt safe enough to let it out. We got help. I continued my classes with Marilyn and even joined the church's support network. A lawyer connected to the church said he would file to make the restraining order permanent and even explore criminal charges for harassment. People from a literacy nonprofit reached out and offered me a full scholarship for tutoring. For the first time in years, things began to look hopeful instead of terrifying. I even started volunteering at that literacy center. I taught young kids to read, slowly sounding out letters and helping them build words. It felt right. Explaining cat or tree to them helped me internalize everything I'd learned. Those kids reminded me of myself, and I cherished watching their eyes light up as they read a whole sentence for the first time. It gave me purpose. One sunny afternoon, the church held a neighborhood picnic in the yard. I was setting up the sound system when I looked up and froze. My father. He was wearing a baseball cap low, trying to look anonymous as he strolled around talking to neighbors. I felt my knees go weak. Every laugh I heard from the kids at the picnic twisted in my stomach. Then something snapped inside me, not fear exactly, but a kind of crystal clear resolve. I realized I was done hiding. Holding the microphone we'd just set up, I stood on the small platform. My voice shook as I spoke, but it grew stronger with each word. "Excuse me," I called. The crowd quieted. Heads turned to see me. I swallowed hard and pointed toward the edge of the lawn. "That man over there is my father. He's not supposed to be here. He's the reason I grew up without an education. He's the man who hurt me for trying to learn. He made it impossible for me to know the world. He hurt me." All eyes on him, Dad's face turned from confusion to panic. I continued, "He doesn't own me anymore." He never did. For a moment the world was still. Then slowly I saw Pastor Mike step up behind me, then Eliza, then Aaron. One by one, people moved to stand beside us, until my father was standing in front of an entire wall of witnesses. My voice strengthened. "Please, sir, you need to leave." His shoulders slumped. Without another word, he turned and walked away. He didn't scream or fight. He just left. There were cheers and applause, but I just exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I felt someone squeeze my shoulder. Pastor Mike was smiling at me proud. That evening, I slept better than I had in years. In the next months, life slowly got normal. I obtained my GED and even enrolled in community college classes. I moved out of the church apartments and into a small house with 3 guys from our church youth group. We laughed at how small the place was. It felt like freedom. Not long after, I got another shock. A message on my phone from an unknown number said, "Congrats on the GED. Didn't think you had it in you." It was oddly proud, not angry. I immediately blocked it. It shook me that he even had this information, but I refused to let it bother me. In that moment, I realized I was stronger than I'd ever been. A semester later, I was sitting in the college library studying when I felt eyes on me. I looked up just as a tall man with a day-old stubble and tired eyes approached. He looked like hell. "Give me 5 minutes, please," he said quietly. Before I could react, I realized it was him. My father, looking homeless and broken. My heart hammering, I nodded slowly. I hit record on my phone and set it on the table between us. He sat down across from me, head bowed. "I lost everything," he began. "After they fired me, I couldn't pay rent. I've been living in my car for weeks." His voice was low, almost apologetic. He hesitated, then forced out, "I saw you at graduation and at your college. I shouldn't have been there. I wanted to see you." His words choked off. I clenched the recorder in my palm. I said nothing. He took a breath. "You're doing good," he said. "Better than I ever did. I still ask people around where you are. I know I shouldn't have. I came here today to say I'm moving to Arizona next week. My brother offered me a job building houses there. I won't contact you anymore, not even this much." His voice cracked. He fished an envelope out of his pocket and slid it across the table. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "This is for you," he said, almost in a whisper, and got up and left without looking back. I sat frozen, adrenaline and relief and exhaustion swirling. When I finally opened the envelope, there was a photograph and a letter. The photo was faded, my mother holding me as a baby, Dad smiling beside us. On the back was a note my mom had written to me, dated just before she died. I read it quickly, tears springing. Her handwriting was gentle. "My sweet baby, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I wanted so much for you. And I know your father will give you everything I dreamed you'd have. He was a good man, maybe a little stubborn, but he loves you. Remember, you will make him proud someday. I love you forever." Tears blurred the last lines. She believed in Dad's love. She didn't know what was coming. My chest ached, but I also felt a kind of peace. He thought he had done me right. She had no way of knowing the future. That night I called Pastor Mike again. I told him what had happened. He looked relieved to hear Dad was leaving town. "Do you believe him?" he asked. I thought about it. Dad had never hurt me again after that confrontation, but he never apologized or changed either. "I don't know, Pastor," I said honestly. I'm just glad it's over. Those next months were the most normal I'd ever known. I took my classes, made real friends, and even started dating Teresa, a sweet girl who had helped me study in the library that day. We took things slowly, but having her by my side made everything feel more real. I volunteered at the literacy center too, tutoring other adults who struggled to read. Explaining basic grammar to them made it sink in for me, and I loved helping them light up when they mastered a sentence. I got good grades, a 3.8 GPA my first term. One Saturday, the church held a small celebration in the basement for me. Pastor Mike gave a short speech about resilience that made me blush. Marilyn brought me a little gift, a nice pen set for all the papers I'd write. Eliza and Aaron snuck in a cake with college-bound genius on it in green icing. We all laughed. At the reception afterwards, Aaron nudged me to look. My dad, with his hat low, had crept in, but church security spotted him and quietly got rid of him. He didn't make a scene this time, he just watched for a moment from a corner and then disappeared again. I realized in that moment, no matter what, I was done with being afraid. I wasn't angry at Dad anymore. That was all gone. I just felt sad. Sad that he had wasted his life in anger and fear. Sad that he'd never overcome his own demons, and that he was so broken inside. I walked home with Teresa that night. We sat in the park and talked under the stars. I felt her hand on my knee as I explained my plans for school and helping others. That's the life I chose now. The next semester I was feeling brave. I got an email from an unknown sender with the simple subject, "Proud." I stared at it before opening. The message said, "Saw your name on the dean's list." Good job. I mean it. No name, nothing else. Just that one line. I knew who it was from. I showed Teresa, and her eyes went wide with tears. "He's proud of you," she whispered. I thought about it all night. Part of me wanted to be angry that he was still watching my life. But a bigger part felt something like acceptance. For once, he had made a real attempt to do something right. He tried, in a terrible way, to connect and to acknowledge what I had achieved. The next morning I deleted the email, closed my laptop, and took a deep breath of fresh air. I felt lighter. There's a quiet sense of closure in my life now. I'm not fully healed. I won't ever forget the past, but I'm not living under its shadow either. I've moved into a better place with other church friends, I study eagerly, and I even have a boyfriend who treats me gently. Some nights I still check under the bed. It's just a habit now. Most nights, though, I fall asleep feeling something warm and new, hope. Hope for classes I'll attend tomorrow, books I'll read, lessons I'll teach. I realized something important. My story isn't just about what my father did to me. It's about all the people who saved me after he was done. It's about Pastor Mike and his church family, about Eliza, Aaron, Marilyn, Teresa. They showed me I had value. This is where I am now, not perfect, but proud of who I'm becoming. Free, determined to turn every scar into strength. And for the first time, I truly believe the future can be brighter than the past.